Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Well, I'm Elmering a new ham in town, and he recently scored a good deal on a Kenwood TS-130S that was sitting in a box down in somebody's basement for more than 12 years. And it worked okay, had some issues, noisy band switch and a few other things. So I offered to go through the radio for him, clean it all up, make it operational, and give it a little TLC before he has the opportunity to put it on the air. So in this video I'm going to cover the repair of the radio, so let's get right into it. Okay, so this is the Kenwood 130S that I'm going to be fixing up. We've got the PS30 power supply. I think that means it's a 30 amp supply. I got to look it up. And the Kenwood matching AT-130 antenna tuner. Interesting tuner. Has a selector switch for the band. 80, 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, and 12, and then 10 meters. I've never seen a tuner that works like that. But you got a selector switch, which I assume is an inductor range, and then a couple of caps, probably a Pi Network tuner. And then the radio, which does power up and does work. Well, it's nighttime, I'm not going to hear much on 20. But the band switch is fiddly. There's 30 meters. There's 40.
Kilo, India, 7, Charlie, Sierra, Zulu, 1027. Alright, I copy 1022.
Alright, so the radio does work. I've already transmitted with it, and it does put out power. So we've got a fiddly band switch that's a little bit loose. Probably there's several wafer switches in there. Probably one or two of them is loose on the shaft, and I'm sure they need to be cleaned. The other controls sound pretty good. What was the other thing I'd noticed? Oh, dial light and meter lights are out, so we're going to have to replace those. Probably put some LEDs in there. I don't know how much I'm going to have to do to this guy. I think I'm just going to have to clean it up. Fix the band switch, replace the lights, and then we'll check its frequency stability and see if it's on frequency, and check the receiver sensitivity. I might go through and tune the IF. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, that's the project. I'm going to get into this tomorrow, and we'll take the covers off the radio, clean it out, and then we'll take a look at this band switch and see what we need to do there. So here we go. Okay, well, we got the top off the radio, and I was fiddling around with these wafer switches here first. Remember that knob was loose. Well, it's nice and tight now, and let me see if I can zoom in, and I'll show you what I had to do. Okay, back here past the back of the wafer switches, there's this little coupling assembly. You can see it's got two little knuckles, and that allows it to be not too rigidly coupled to the switch in the back here in the transmitter section, which probably switches back there, probably switches the various filters for the transmit section. These grub screws in here had loosened up, so that was why that shaft was loose. When you rotate it, you can see it turning there. So all I had to do was tighten up those grub screws right there, and then there's two more on the back side, and that took care of the sloppiness in the knob. Now I'm going to have to clean these wafer switches on the back here. There's a circular ring of contacts on the back, and I've got some contact cleaner that I'll wash those with and then exercise them. And then back here, back inside the transmitter, there's another wafer switch that fortunately I've got a nice big gap and I can see it right there, so I'll be able to hit it and clean it up, and that should take care of the noisiness on the band switching. So that's going to fix that right up. Now out here on the front, this is the light rice grain light bulb that was in the VFO, and it's burned out, and there's another one back here in the meter. So these two rice grain light bulbs are burned out, and I don't have exact replacements, but I got something close, and I've already fitted it here into the little boot that holds it in the VFO. So I'll put that back in, and then I'll just wire this in. There's a, swing the camera around. There we go. Right here on the board is two pins that provide 12 volts, or actually 13 volts to the lights. So I'll have to pop the meter out to get the light in it, and I found one more light bulb that's 12 volts, so I'll need to solder a wire on that and insert it in the boot for the meter, so I'll have the lights fixed. And then it's just going to be some cleanup. I'm going to hit all these controls with contact cleaner and wiper cleaner back here in the back, exercise them, and then these switches down here. They're a little bit trickier to get to, but they've got a nice opening actually on the front of the switches, right down in here. Right back here is an open area into the switch assembly itself, where the wiper is. And the way that those work is it's a flat assembly that moves back and forth that has metal contacts on the top. So when that moves back, it wipes those contactors back and forth. And I can hit those with cleaner, so I'll clean those too and exercise them. And then we'll do some cosmetic work. There's some dirt and grime in here. We'll get those out, put a drop of machine oil in those bushings. And we'll clean up like these panels here and the front panel. And here's the VFO. Back this out a little bit. Here's the VFO, so we'll clean that lens there. And it has a geared assembly down in there that rotates to drive the variable capacitor inside there. So I'll take this shield off, and I'll clean the wiper contacts and the variable capacitor so we don't get any noise there. And I'll put a little drop of machine oil on these gears. The grease that was on them has solidified and dried up, and they're rattling, so we'll smooth that right up. Okay, so I thought I'd show you the inside of the VFO since we've got it out of here. There you go. Small variable capacitor. And what I'll be doing is, if you can see them there, you see these ball bearings here and this wiper. We're going to clean that and then re-lubricate it with some silicone grease. And there's a wiper back here, and we're going to clean that too, so that the cap has nice good electrical contact as it rotates, and that'll prevent any jumping or variance in frequency. And then we'll, like I said, just a drop of oil on the bushings, bearings, and gears, and put the cover back on and put it all back together. I got the light bulb replaced in the meter. I've got the new light bulb wired in for the VFO. That'll go in the top of it when I go to put it, actually right here. When I go to put it back together, that light bulb will sit right in there to light up the dial. I've already tried the light bulbs, powered it up. They come on just fine, so we're moving right along. Now we're up to cleaning. So we'll do some cleaning, lubrication, cleaning in the wafer switches. And then I think we'll be ready to power it up and see how it sounds. Well, we're getting her back together. Got the front panel on, VFO in. I was just ready to power it up and see how it looks. Oh, look at that! We got dial lights. How about that? And the VFO looks like it's, let's see, right there is 300. And the display says, you know, we're pretty darn close, 10.300. So, looks like the dial's right. All right, she's all back together. All the knobs are cleaned up, the lights are working. The band switch doesn't wiggle anymore, doesn't make any noise. Oh, well, maybe I gotta open her back up. Looks like I got a dirty wiper yet on 28.5 range. Almost there. Okay, so I've solved the problem with the 10-meter band switch being still a little fiddly. This wafer switch here is slightly out of alignment with these. So the way a wafer switch works, you've got a wiper that rotates around and you've got these fingers that it goes between to make contact as it wipes around. And on the 10-meter, or on this wafer here, when you would switch to a band, instead of being right in the middle of those fingers, it would be right off to the side and just barely making contact. And you had to just push the switch a little bit to get it to slide in there and touch those connections. So what I did was, back here inside of here is the detent. It's 2 ball bearings that are spring loaded that pop into a slot when you turn the switch. Those ball bearings just sort of pop into a groove, and that's what keeps the switch clicked in one spot. So I loosened these set screws again, and I turned it to where this wafer, to where that finger was more in the connection, instead of off to the side, was more in the connection, and then tightened these back down. So when the detent stops, the selector switch, that one is making contact, and that completely solved that problem with 10 meters being a little fiddly. I ran across something else during transmission testing. First off, it transmits great, full power out. It just drives wonderfully. It sounds pretty good too. But it would not transmit on the WARC bands. It would not transmit on 10 megahertz, 17 megahertz, or 24 megahertz. I discovered that this radio was produced right as those bands became available, and had a blocking mechanism in it to prevent transmission on those bands, and the user manual actually has instructions for re-enabling transmission on those bands. So I'm going to do that modification. Now it's really hard to see it. I don't think I can get it on the camera, but right down in here, right down here on this board, buried behind this connector, are 3 diodes, one for each band, and a brown wire. Yeah, you really can't see it down in there. I'm kind of pointing at it with the screwdriver. There's a brown wire right down here that comes down to the board just behind this wafer switch. That's the common cathode on those diodes, and the manual says if you cut that wire, that will enable transmit on the WARC bands. So I'm going to make that modification to open the radio up for all the bands, and then we'll put it back together and we'll put it on the air on 20 meters, which is active today, and make a contact, show you that it works. Alright, on the WARC band modification for transmit on 10 megahertz, 17 megahertz, and 24 megahertz, getting down in there to where that jumper is, it's really tight without unhooking a bunch of stuff. But I traced the wire back and I found that it's a brown wire that comes up here, and it's easy to spot, because if you go back here, behind this wafer switch, you can see the brown wire in an insulated connection down to the board. So I just pulled it back, traced it back, and I cut it back here. So it was easy to get to right here, and I'll put some heat shrink on that to insulate that so it doesn't short against anything. But that was the wire cut, and I cut that wire, and I just tested it, and it transmits on the WARC bands now. So at this point, I think we're done with the radio. Let me put it all back together. We'll hook up a 20-meter dipole to it, and we'll get on the air with it and make a contact. Well, in being thorough, I decided to wire up a wire for the meter light on the antenna tuner. And the light bulb was bad, burned out, and it was impossible to get to. It was mounted on, it's actually part of the meter, and there's a metal bracket that retains the meter, which is screwed to the front panel behind the label, behind the adhesive label on the front. So I thought, well, rather than peel off the label and try to get it all back on nice and neat and clean, because I don't want to screw up any of the graphics here, to get that bracket out, to get the meter out so I can get the light bulb out. It's a goofy little inline or little tube light bulb here on a PC board that was on the meter, so I just broke that PC board out of there, and I am making a diode that will fit in just like so down inside the meter and light it up just fine. So in the process of soldering that up, putting some heat shrink over it, and I'm going to hot glue it in there and connect the power leads to it, and that'll replace the meter light, so we should have a usable light for the meter. The rest of the antenna tuner is extremely clean inside. Everything is good. I'm going to go ahead and clean the wafer switches while I've got it open, though, just for grins and giggles, and lubricate the detent on the select switch. You know, just for maintenance. Just as long as I got it open, I might as well do that. And then we'll get it all back together, and then we'll put the radio on the air and make a contact. But I'll finish this first. Okay. As you can see, we've got a light on the SWR, or the SWR meter on the antenna tuner. It's working. The radio is working great. I'm going to zoom in on the radio, and we're going to try to talk to this guy down in Texas. He's taking a bunch of calls rapid fire, so we'll see what we can do.
November 5 Foxtrot, National Fire Prevention Week.
Kilowatt Bravo 9, Radio Lima Whiskey.
The only one I got out of that was a Kilo Bravo 9.
Yeah, it's a Kilowatt Bravo 9, Radio Lima Whiskey, over.
Kilowatt Bravo 9, Radio Lima Whiskey. Kevin in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Booming 5959 Texas.
Yes, sir. Thanks very much. I'm testing out a old Kenwood TS-130S I just finished refurbishing for a new ham here in town. He just bought it from a neighbor, had it down in the basement for 12, 15 years. So I just finished going through the radio, and you're the first contact with it, over.
Sounds like he's going to be getting him a good sounding radio. It's doing a good job, no doubt about it.
All right, sir. Well, thanks very much. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to be putting this in a YouTube video that I did on the repair. Is that all right with you?
Yes, sir. That'll be fine. It'll get a little advertisement into the special event station. A Kilo Bravo 9, Radio Lima Whiskey. This is November 5 Foxtrot. A special event station, QRZ.
If you would, sir, just real quick, let me know what your special event is for the video.
Oh, yeah, the special event runs through the 15th. It runs through midnight on the 15th, and you work 9 stations. You can pick up a little certificate yourself.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thanks very much, and thanks for the first test QSO on this repaired radio. 73, and good luck with your special event. KB9RLW.
Alrighty, well, good luck to you, and hope you get to work on the other, get some of the other stations out Lima Whiskey. This is November 5 Foxtrot. Smoke alarm should be sent at least once a month. 73's to you. Good luck. This is November 5 Fox. You're there.
Well, there you go. The TS-130S is back up and working, and I guess it sounds pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with the job. I'll give the new owner a call and let him know his radio is ready to be picked up, and hopefully next month at the Hamfest he gets his general and he can start putting this on the air and tickling the airwaves. Thanks for tagging along with me on this repair, and have a good day.